good afternoon. I was going to say evening because here it is evening. But
Morning for me. Well, no, I guess it's
it's
afternoon.
morning for you, afternoon, whoever is in Eastern time. But yeah, we're here again with our seventh episode of Dark Night of the Soul. And today, tonight, we have Joe Rambo and yeah, and Kate. But Kate has a bit of a hoarse voice. Do you say
Yes.
hoarse? Yeah.
Yeah, we say horse. People are used to hearing me like this because I lose my voice all the time. But yeah, I sound like Joe Cocker again. So
No, Kim Carnes.
I don't even know who that is.
No, it's a heartache. You know, the one with the
Oh, yes. I'd rather
that
sound like
one.
that.
Yeah.
I
Did I give away my generation?
Kate, I gotta say, genuinely, I feel horrible for you because last week I could not talk at all. So if
Oh,
you're going through the same thing I went through, you have my full prayers. It was brutal.
were you like sick?
Sick. Yeah. I couldn't talk, and I kept trying to do shows anyway because I love what I do and I love the people that hang out with us and do all these things with us. I struggled last week, but yeah, I feel for you. I finally got it back. We're good, but
Well,
I actually
that's
find it really sexy.
for
yeah.
me.
Yeah, you really sound sexy. We call it
I
like the well, we have a 06 number, right? And you go like, "Hi, baby."
zero. We call those 1-900. We have 1-900 numbers.
Right. Okay. Yeah. For us, that's a free number for governmental stuff.
Oh, really? I thought you were going to say that the sex working hotline was free and owned by the government, which, you know
No.
what? In Europe,
kind of.
I believe it.
Yeah. I
So,
mean, it's legal here, but it's regulated actually, which is a good thing. But well, if people gonna do it, they're gonna do it anyway. It may as well be regulated. So, yeah, that's kind of they pay their taxes too.
gotcha. Well, I'm all for patriotism. Well, Joe, thank you for joining us today.
Yes.
And, it's such an honor it's an honor to be your friend, but it's an honor anytime I get to sit and talk with you like this and hear your story and talk to you about, first of all, like you were saying, what you do now is a passion and it comes across absolutely that you love what you do. And that's really important. And what you're doing is really important. And it was not an easy road to get you where you are. And that's kind of what we talk about here on Dark Night of the Soul. It's one of the things that bonds us is that, the shitty part of waking up and leading us to this.
You know what's funny, Kate? So,
Nothing.
well, there's a thing I talk about all the time, and I think this was my preparation. I don't know that I've even mentioned this on a show before, but logically it fits together. Okay. I always said that I'm not an OG. I wasn't on the boards. I wasn't there when a lot of people were already waking up. There was tons of people that laid the groundwork for what I do. But during that time, I was going through the worst period of my life ever. Right. I had already lost everybody. And it didn't take this movement for me to lose everybody. It was confirmation that those people that already were hurt by me took that time to have confirmation that they didn't want to be my friend because they were all stuck in the matrix. But I had already all lost them. I lost them all because of the decisions I had made in my life. So OG on the boards, no. But hardship and losing everyone prior to, I came into this movement raw. Everyone that I read about or read their posts or looked into what they did, the stuff they presented, I did it very, very alone. And so you all quickly became my people, whether you wanted to or not. It was just where I was in life. Right. So that's kind of the very broad basics of how this started for me.
Well, it's interesting because it's kind of like we were talking about before this. It's not about Q. Q was one catalyst. That's one avenue in which people woke up. But there were many things. There were and many different stages. For some people, it was COVID. That was the that was the thing that woke them up. Some people woke up at 9/11. Some people woke up at, who knows. And so there are all these different stages of it, but all these different avenues all lead to the same place. And even if it wasn't, even if you didn't lose it all because you woke up, it was the other way around. It still is the fundamental kind of what is woven into all of these stories, is that something about that needed to happen. We're all like primed and ready for that to happen. And whether it comes before or after or right as we are waking up, it is that piece where it's like, without that, I don't think you can really consider yourself on an awakening journey. You can be red pilled. You can understand that there's corruption. You can understand that the governments are bad and that, people are slaves. But if you're not going through that personal dark night of the soul where you lose it all, everything crumbles, you are brought to your knees, then you're not experiencing the Great Awakening yet.
Right.
Well, can I ask you something back? As somebody I looked up to for so long. Okay, so I naturally, from the beginning, I mean, even prior to my whole life falling apart, always questioned anything authoritative, right? Anything that a teacher told me, or a principal, or the news, or the TV, or I was always that person. It doesn't mean I was awake. It just meant I questioned everything. Was it the same for somebody that was there laying the groundwork before me?
In a way, my dad was red pilled. My dad was all the way red pilled. My mom is really, really smart, and she was mostly there. But my dad was I grew up with listening to him talk about the Federal Reserve and, paper money and government corruption and, even some of the esoteric stuff. But I think kind of low key, that seed is in all of us. And I think that is why we have depression. That's why we have addiction. That's why we have darkness. It's because I think we low key know that this stuff has happened. We know that evil is real, but we just can't put our finger on it. So we just think we hate the world, or we just don't fit. We don't belong.
I would see it actually as a catalyst, like your personal journey as a catalyst for then figuring out what's going on in the world. But at the same time, it's kind of a balancing game. For me, it went like parallel next to each other. And so one moment I would be like completely depressed about what's going on in the world. But then at the same time, I would be pulled back from that and being busy with my own personal life. So I think it's different for everybody, but at all times it's a catalyst to something new, a new awakening and reawakening. And I think it also goes in waves. It never is just one thing, right? So once you got one hurdle done, a next one may come after that. So, but yeah, I'm very curious about your story, Joe, how that came to be.
I would love. Sorry, that was Gitmo, everybody.
And she's so cute. Oh my God.
Yes.
She's the best. She's a pain in my ass, but she's the best. I'll keep it short because I've told the story a lot, but the basics of what happened.
No, the whole point is you don't keep it short because that's what the show is for.
No, it's fine. We'll get into whatever.
No, I'm just joking. I mean, whatever you like.
I'll tell you the whole thing if you want to know it.
Yes, I do.
We're nosy.
So
Yes.
the bones of it is, my dad was 30 plus when he met my mom, who was 17. Already a weird dynamic, right? And then, but this is back in the day, right? I'm 40. I'm about to be 44 next week. So it wasn't as weird back then as it is now, but it was weird. And mom like ran away from home and didn't have a whole lot of structure. Her actual dad died. Her stepfather probably didn't treat, especially her and 5 brothers. So she was the one that got the weird end of that stick. Anyway, she had lost a child just prior to me. And that was at age 19. And I think I came along at 20 or 21. And so you're dealing with a very traumatized young lady that was even more traumatized through trying to be the wife of a guy that was 30 plus at the time. Anyway, lots of emotional damage. And so that kind of trickles down throughout the family. And so, being the oldest of three, I took the brunt of that. And so, throughout that process, I learned that I was always searching for their attention, and whether or not I got it to the point where I was satisfied wasn't necessarily their fault, but more the way I was reacting to things. And due to that insecurity, I ended up finding anything you could possibly fill a hole in your chest with, whether it be girls or parties or attention or drugs or alcohol or whatever. And so I ended up being MVP on every team I ever played on. I was a very good athlete. I was the center of attention because I was the class clown. I was getting by in my classes because I was risen up to teachers. Like, I'm not even joking. Everything about what I did was very like suave at the time. At least that's what I thought about myself. Meanwhile, I'd go home and I would just be empty. So, being that I was close to one of these very liberal blue cities in Philadelphia, it wasn't a very far leap, hop, and a jump to end up in the hood. And that's where I ended up. I ended up in Kensington. I ended up running the gamut of every drug, from smoking weed and drinking beer to, start climbing the ladder, whether it be cocaine or, all the way to meth and heroin, etc. So I spent a lot of years struggling, and I never wanted to be a drug addict. I had no idea how I ended up there. But throughout that process, I ended up in 5 different rehabs. I ended up getting Narcan 8 different times. Some of them, I got Narcan 3 different doses just to keep me alive.
What's
So-
sorry? What's Narcan?
Narcan is a drug that they'll give you to reverse the chemical thing that's going on in your body, because it stops overdose, basically.
Okay.
So Narcan is a drug that will basically save someone's life if they're overdosing.
Oh, I get it. Is that the stuff that they put in the heart?
No, that's adrenaline.
Well, it's similar. It's similar. It's they can apply it different ways. They can do it up through your nostril, so you inhale it. They can literally shoot it into your thigh or whatever it might be. But Narcan, honestly, I was probably one of the first groups of when it started. I was only saved by Narcan. Like, this
You were
is
the
how
beta tester.
I was, but it saved my life many, many times. And long story short is, I have a long paper trail of convictions of minor, possessions, small DUIs, not for alcohol typically, but for drugs. I spent many skid bids, what we would call them, in jail. I did 30 days here. I did 60 days there. I did 30 days here. Nothing was ever violent. I was not a criminal. I wasn't out there robbing banks, but I was addicted to drugs. And so, long story short, in the end, and you know what? I really want to say this out loud, because I've only said it one other time on the air, and I don't want anyone to ever be able to use anything that I've done against me. So I'll drop a little bit of a bomb on you guys. And this is going to be very difficult for me, but I've already done it one time, so this will be the second. The most embarrassing charge I have on my record is that is a child endangerment, because I overdosed in the house while my child was there. So of course I didn't abuse a child. Of course there's nothing, but I still have a child endangerment. And it's probably the most embarrassing thing I've ever been through. And I still, to this day, when I pray, come to tears over it. But now it's all out there. I Eminem'd that situation. Go ahead and use it against me. You can. I already told you.
Well, I do want to say, with addiction comes a loss of control over yourself. So, I've seen it numerous times. I've been in rehab. I heard the stories numerous times like that. And, you just know it's making you powerless. And then whatever happens, obviously, is not an excuse, but, these things happen. And important is to forgive yourself. And I think that's the most important part. But I do admire already that you know where it all started from and how you got to that point. And that, a lot of people don't even go digging in that. And it is necessary in order to come out of it to figure out where it came from in the first place. So I don't hold it against you. And I think nobody should, because, we've all done things that, rendered us powerless. And even if it could have potentially put somebody in danger, but nothing happened.
I mean,
So
listen, if anybody's ever driven drunk before or even tipsy and you didn't kill somebody and you got away with that, people like that really don't have a right to look down their nose at people. It's not what you did, it's what you do. We've all messed up in the past. Some of us were luckier than others. Some of us got away with the things that we did. Like, for example, I drove drunk when I was in high school and college. It was like a regular, you just did that. That was just, we all did it. And I'm mortified by that now. And I thank God every day that I didn't ever hurt anybody. But I could have very easily have, so.
Well, on the flip side of that, to both you ladies, first of all, I wholeheartedly agree with everything both of you just said. There's also a personal responsibility that needs to be taken when mistakes like that happen. So I talked early on about how I lost everybody. Well, I lost everybody not just because I was some crazy MAGA or whatever. I lost everybody because of very honest reasons. My brother was the one that had to break the window to come in and find me on the ground and then take care of my kid. So of course, my brother found me basically dead. He doesn't want to talk to me again. He's hurt and he's upset, and I have to take responsibility for that. And then, if I could just tell the last part of this story, at the very end, the tail end of what I went through, I went through a lot of self-help programs, 12-step, AA, NA, etc. And so part of that process is that you have to take responsibility and you have to make amends for the things you've done wrong. And that is a very difficult process for somebody that's walking around with as much guilt, shame, and remorse as, I'm not the only one. There's many of us that have been through that process. And part of that's also legal, right? So if you have warrants or you owe your time to society, etc., you also have to walk into those courtrooms. And so at the end of my process, I had to do that. Through the guidance of a sponsor in AA, I had to walk into courtrooms and say, here I am. Let's take care of this so I can pay my debt and move on and become, a productive member of society rather than a detriment. And so I went to do that in a county right outside of Philadelphia where I was brought up in media. And I took a train with 4 friends from York into Philly. It's a 2-hour train ride. And I walked in there to try to take care of something I thought was small. And when I walked in, they arrested me for something that I owed in Portland, Oregon, which is 2,500 miles away. And I never in my life thought, that was on the end of my list. I'll go take care of that one when I do it, right? But that's not how that worked. As soon as I walked into that media courthouse, they didn't even let me see the judge for the thing I thought I was taking care of. They arrested me and they put me in jail. And I spent 90 days in Delaware County's jail. I'm sorry. 90 days would have been the day they would have let me go. I spent 89 days in Delaware County's prison before the feds picked me up. And then they spent 7 weeks, 7 jails, 3 airplanes, surrounded by federal marshals, transferring me all the way to Portland, Oregon. And they didn't even see me for the thing that I went into court for. And so when I got there, I had gotten a phone call from what was my absolute best friend at the time and also my sponsor I talked about previously. And he told me that there was something going on in my family and that he couldn't tell me, but he wanted me to pick up the phone or call a number in the morning and that my brother would be on 3-way, even though that was against the rules, and they would let me know what's going on. And that morning, my brother got on the phone with that gentleman I'm talking about, and they told me that my dad was not going to make it. And I was blown away. And so what we're talking about right here is very early in 2016. And so I was already doing well, but I was paying for the prices of my past, and it was rough. So I get there, and so that happens, and then and I get told to make the same phone call the next morning. And when I make the same phone call the next morning, I found out that my father had passed away. So my dad died. And when my dad died, I was in Portland, Oregon, and he was in Delaware County, just outside of Philly. And I was already walking around with tons of guilt, shame, and remorse. And then I found out that his dying wish was that everybody in the room go vote for Donald Trump.
I'm sorry. That's funny.
It's hysterical, right? I'm like, what the hell is he talking? What are they? Why would he? Why
He was awake.
right? Well, he was an ex-Marine. He got discharged, and I don't really know the details of it. He never talked about his time in Vietnam. He was one of those guys, but he was very, he was a member at the VFW. I'm gonna have to get this dog outside. He did all these things that I looked up to. I was never able to get in the military like him, but when he said that, it just kind of blew me away. I'm gonna turn this off just so I can get rid of her barking for just 2 seconds.
We should breed Gitmo and Archie and then have the world's most annoying dogs that have to pee only when there is a microphone present.
But the cutest looking, though.
Oh my God, it's seriously the cutest.
She's the worst.
The best ones are. The best ones are the worst.
I didn't think about it. When I moved to Florida, I bought this. I'm renting this very humble little condo. It's just 2 bedrooms, me and my son upstairs. And so I have my battle station in the corner of this very humble. I can't keep her barking away from the microphone, so I'm sorry about that.
Life happens. We love it.
So Dad's dying wish was to everybody in the room to go vote for Donald Trump. And I'm almost 3,000 miles away on the other side of the country. And I've done nothing but let this man down, who's my hero, by the way.
Well, he had his priorities,
Right. Right. But what do you do then? What do you do then? When you're 3,000 miles away, you've let down your hero for decades now. Right. And he gives you this order, as far as you're taking it, it's an order to go do something. And I'm like, well, why? Why is that the last thing you said? And so I went on this mission. And that's when I found people like you two. That's when I found Anons. That's when I found all the people that were on the boards. This was just prior to that Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump standoff. And I wasn't on the boards yet, but I started hitting social media and starting trying to figure out why. And to be honest, I replaced my addiction.
Wow. Your dad literally pushed you into this movement. As his last dying wish, although it was not like indirectly. I mean, that's insane. That's beautiful.
Yeah,
it is. It is. And as a parent, I'm sure I mean, we want, if our lives do nothing other than propel our children in the direction that they should be going, then we have lived a life well. Right? It doesn't matter anything else to your dad. He is looking down right now. And this could have all been divinely orchestrated exactly the way that it was in order for you to be where you are. We all like to fantasize that we can just go from, having it a little rough to being exactly where we are. But the thing is, if we don't have those dark nights, if we don't have that really awful shit, there's no flavor to it. There's no grit. There's nothing, there's no tooth to it to actually keep us in that, because you have an understanding now because of what you went through. And part of that is, the feeling of letting your dad down. I don't think you did. I mean, who doesn't let their parents down when they are young, right? But now where you are is the payoff for what you had to go through, and your dad having to, see you like that, which I'm sure was heartbreaking, but where you are now makes it all worth it.
I do wonder. I wonder if he's ever like, bro, chill out. You're going too hard. Like, relax.
I mean,
No, I
I
think
got
he's
it.
cheering you on from above. He's like, this is exactly what I needed to do. Because, I mean, I found this very comical, but at the same time, it's so divinely orchestrated, right? I mean, you had must have had so much shame and guilt and all that stuff, which a lot of us know about. But then, because it's actually quite just vote for Trump, and then you questioning the why was exactly what was needed, because you could have said, okay, I'm going to vote for Trump just to make him happy, but no, you decided to actually do the research. And you probably did the research because it's almost like you were thrown off how do you say that, thrown
Kilter?
off.
Kilter?
Sorry.
Off kilter?
Yeah, yeah, kind of like that, because it's like the least thing you would expect. Although I don't know your dad, but you do know your dad. But um, yeah, it's so beautiful. I have to say, it's so beautiful.
So you know how the drops give hat tips to certain like autists, right? So autists are mentioned many times. I'm not sure that they realize that the obsessive compulsives would also get involved, which is what I'm much less autistic. I'm much more obsessive compulsive. That comes with drug addiction, and so obsessive has kind of become the way that I am about this whole thing. I don't know if they really anticipated that, but that's what happened with me.
See, I think they did. I think they knew full well what kind of personality types that they were attracting with these puzzles and these cryptic messages. And at its core, it's it's about things that are so important. How could you not be obsessive about it? How can you not obsess over, children being harmed? It's
Mhm.
like once you learn about how deep and dark it goes, you can no longer chit chat with people. I mean, it's torture. You're like, I don't want to freaking talk about Netflix. I don't want to talk about, celebrity gossip. This is the only thing that matters. But I do think that there are these certain kinds of brains that they were attracted. You don't have to necessarily be autistic. I don't think I am autistic, but I love patterns and I love pattern recognition. I love puzzles. I love stuff like that. So I think they knew full well what they were doing, and it was brilliant.
So then, which year was this that this happened?
So that was just prior to the 2016 election,
Oh,
and
wow.
to be honest with you, I was in no position to vote, so I did not vote in 2016. But everybody else that was in that room that were already productive members of society, my older half sister, my younger brother and sister, even my mom, who they were divorced at the time, but they all did what he asked. I wasn't able to. So there's
But
just
were they conservative, or were they like, your siblings and rest of the family, or did they just do it because your dad asked? So,
they were the type of conservatives where like their parents and grandparents voted red. But to be honest with you, if I look at those family members, I would tell you they are not on the same wavelength that I am. Uh,
right.
but they think they're outside the box because they live in Philly. Does that
Mm,
make sense?
yeah.
No, not for me, but
Well,
I
because
guess.
Philadelphia is very blue.
Oh,
It's
okay.
it's
Yeah.
yeah, so you would feel like an outsider just because you weren't a liberal.
Right. But they're liberals.
But you do
Okay.
realize that the reason you got all the way in, obsessive or not, um, I do think it's because you went through that deep, dark hole first. And so as soon as you got into, discovering, you discovered a whole new world, I assume.
Agreed. Okay, so here let me give you a good example. Because of those things that I told you happened with my child, I lost him for a decade. I lost my son.
Right.
And so my son was in my mother's care. And all I did, and this was only 4 years after what I'm talking about, I begged and pleaded to just be part of the discussion when it came to a vaccine.
Mm.
And I was not given that choice. He was vaccinated behind my back twice.
Oh,
And
that's
so
terrible.
these same people that I'm telling you are voting conservative were falling right in line with everything that was being pumped down their throat through the mainstream media. And I was already on this path of questioning everything and finding amazing people like you guys out there on X, and at the time it ended up being Parlor and Gab, and everywhere else we landed. And so I'm following all of these messages, and nobody else is putting the time or effort in. They're just turning on. At that time, even Fox was full of shit. CNN, doesn't matter what you turned on, we were giving the same amplified messaging: 6 feet, mask, vaccine, do what you're told. And I'm over here going, can we just talk about this? Can we just lay it all out? Can I just be part of the discussion with the doctor? And I was denied because I was the ex-junkie and they were the shining stars that jumped in to save the day. So I wasn't given any recognition at all. Now I'm just the crazy conspiracy theorist. So it was a really hard time to be now clean and doing well, and then try to interject in the conversation while they're the ones being the quote unquote responsible adults in my place, because I wasn't. It was hard.
It seems like a very common theme because I now know a lot of people in this movement and a lot of people at the forefront of this movement. A very common theme, excuse me, is drug addiction. Or if you look, actually, a lot of women from the porn industry, for whatever reason, are super red pilled and talking about this stuff, or people that have gone to jail, or people that have very checkered past. Why is that? And I think it's because these are the outliers. These are the people that, like you said, they never felt like they belonged. They never really felt like they fit in. And they obviously took that dark path because they were like, well, I'm not going to eat all the bullshit. And, if I'm going to go one way, I'm going to go off on my own. I'm going to go balls to the wall. It is a very dark process. And I don't advocate for that dark process, but it just seems to be that was kind of the way that it had to happen. But all of those people are very good bridge builders because of what they've been through, because they're not looking from a lofty standpoint of, look how well I did, and look how perfectly I did everything along the lines. No, it's look how bad I messed up. And if I can get to this point, then you can get there too. That's how you build a bridge.
Yeah,
What's interesting to
definitely.
me is you were already in the process of humbling yourself, doing the right thing, facing your consequences, facing the circumstances. That is huge. And I do want to talk to you a little bit more about that process of humbling yourself and breaking through that ego, because like you said, you were the class clown. You were the guy who, like, all eyes on me. That's like this tough exterior, almost like a defense mechanism, but that makes it kind of hard to put yourself in that position where you are like, breaking down that ego. But once you were already in that process, now you're like, okay, well, I'm facing my consequences. I'm doing all this stuff. And that's when you get the news about your dad. And it's almost like, well, wait, I'm fixing it now. Like, all this bad stuff I did before, like, shouldn't things start going right for me? And then life is like, nope, actually, it's going to get harder.
Right.
So the world judges you on, let me say this. We judge ourselves on our intentions, and the world judges us on our actions.
Right.
And in no way, shape, or form is anyone going to, especially when you've already acted a certain way, is going to be aligned with your intentions, right? So it takes much longer for people to accept you as changing your life, which is an anomaly, let's be honest.
Yeah.
Most people in my position are dead or in jail.
Yeah.
And so I am a bit of an anomaly when it comes to that stuff, but I'm not the only one. There's many of us out here. This movement is full of black sheep.
Oh yeah. Actually, I think the majority is. I do believe, because I was there from the beginning with the whole queue and in the chants, and I did see on the boards and all that stuff, and literally everybody was in some sort of an addiction. It was ridiculous, but every now and then, or every single month, there was a new one that said, I'm clean a week. And because they're digging, and their focus is they change their focus from what, because I do strongly believe there was also a loss of purpose, which comes with a lot of people that do not fit in, usually also lose their purpose in life. And so I think this may have given a purpose. And on top of that, the fact that everybody was anonymous to begin with, it makes it it made you also freer to talk about whatever was going on, because nobody knows who I am. Hell, they don't even know if I'm a man or a woman. So and that's what I saw on the boards, especially happening constantly, that people were talking about their deepest, darkest secrets. And yet everybody cheered them on to just keep going. Even Q did so, and it definitely, I think it brought so many people on the straight path, that we don't have no idea how big that number is, but I think it's giant. Even in my circle online alone, I know at least 10 people that went that route to get clean and to go the straight path. So how many others are there, right?
I got a question for you too. And this has been my experience. Tell me if you agree or disagree. My friends that all went to college and are highly educated, I'm not saying all, maybe I shouldn't have said all. The mass majority of those people scoff at what I do because they have been taught to bring in information that's been pumped to them and regurgitate it so they can get an A. And I learned everything I learned after high school on the streets of Philadelphia, homeless in Portland, and in prison. And so, again, I started by already questioning everything. And then I learned my education is on the street. I can't spell. Anybody that reads my post knows that, like, oh, there goes Joe again, spelling you are instead of you or whatever, right? I can't spell, stinks, is what it is. But I do believe I can speak. And so I've learned everything I've learned because I've had to survive rather than be indoctrinated. And I think those people that are highly educated, some of the people out here that think they're the smartest, and I'm not knocking anybody, I'm just talking about a subject. They think they're the smartest in the movement. They've got the biggest words, and they're presenting themselves in a way that's very educated and attractive. Aren't necessarily thinking outside the box. And we're absolutely, in my opinion, in a state of fifth generation warfare where you have to be able to separate your emotions and your education and take a step back and observe what's going on and discern and then talk about it. And that takes a much different education than Harvard.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
it's not just that they're indoctrinated. It's when you spend that much time and money and effort to go to school, it also becomes part of your identity. And now this system that you have paid into, that's supposed to repay you in dividends, and other people are saying, no, actually the system needs to be overhauled. Now you're like, oh shit, what am I going to do? My entire identity and my entire self-worth is wrapped up in the system. You don't want to see it go away.
Well,
Right.
yeah, and a lot of people that have paid like and studied for years and years, the academic people, a lot of them are also very, first of all, they're indoctrinated, a lot of them, but also there's this pride, right? Like, I know better because I studied so many years. I paid all that money for it. You didn't do shit. You were on the street, blah, 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 and all that judgment, right? But for being streetwise, I'm one that is streetwise as well, and an autodidact. I taught myself everything, but I also learned that way, and I think many of us learn to think for ourselves because all we got was criticism anyway. So what is left? All it's left. Well, we had our own criticism to ourselves as well, but eventually, you always learn to think for yourself, and no authority outside of you gets to tell you what to do because they've been treating us like shit. So, and I think that's where the difference is, and I totally agree that a lot of these academy people and university people that studied for years, I do think on the one hand there is this pride, and on the other hand there is also just indoctrination, because it's a status symbol. Don't forget that it's like a status symbol to I have studied, so what are you going to question me, right?
That's one
That
of the other reasons that the Q operation is so interesting and so unique, is that look at the education that it gave all of us in all of these different topics, to where I'm sure, Joe, like, you were never You don't sound like you were ever a real studious guy, were you? Like, were you a big reader, or were you?
No. I bullshit my way through.
Yeah. And maybe part of that too is like, kind of like we were talking about, our brains subconsciously know that there's evil, and so we've rejected society. Maybe the same way we couldn't really pay attention in school. We couldn't really get involved in school because maybe subconsciously we knew it was all bullshit. And so it was like, why am I going to dedicate myself to something that doesn't feel right anyway, even if we don't even consciously know that that's what it is?
Well, okay, so you know what's funny? I spent a lot of years struggling, and I wouldn't give them away for $1 million because I wouldn't be where I'm at now. And I believe I've gotten the greatest education on the planet from the things I already talked about in the street and the jails and the rehabs, but also this movement. So we talked about this a little bit pre-show, but so I swung very, very far on what I call the pendulum of this truther movement. And I ended up looking at things that were like giving me hope because I had none left in my previous life. And so I grabbed onto these things and I was let down. I was let down a lot. And so I felt, when I talk about that pendulum swing, I feel like I settled somewhere in the middle. And during that process, I will tell you, I walked around like a Bible thumper, smacking people in the face with what I believed to be the truth. And I was wrong in a lot of cases. I was wrong, at least in my tactics. I'm not sure that all of the truth that I believed was the truth is wrong at this point. I'm still trying to figure that out. But my tactics were way wrong. And I turned more people off than I attracted. And when I realized that, I found that I had to look back at something I was taught in those 12-step programs, which was attraction rather than promotion. And so nobody wants somebody to knock on their door and smack them in the face with the Bible. Nobody wants to be told adrenochrome or anything, pick your poison.
Frazzle drip.
Right. Spirit cooking. So nobody wants to hear all that in your face. However, if you use these different social media platforms, Rumble, and you carry yourself in a way that's attractive, this is the same thing they taught me in AA, then somebody's going to see it. And then they might ask you a question like, hey, what did you mean by this? Because they overheard or they saw something from a distance. And so if you walk in an attractive way, then people become attracted and then you can have the conversation. But if you walk into the bar and say, yeah, something crazy, Tom Hanks, pizza, whatever, all people are going to do is look at you like you're nuts. You're not swaying that pendulum at all. And so I have through this process, I'm sure it'll change tomorrow. It's changed every day since the day I started. I think that my tactics have gotten better. I try to make it attractive. I try to bring people to the conversation, and I try not to demonize them when I disagree. And I think that's the biggest possible thing. If you're demonizing people because they disagree, what are you doing but drawing a line in the sand? It means nothing. We don't have to agree. What do we agree on? Children are important. A republic is important. Leaving a future that our forefathers intended for us is important, right? If you can all agree on these tip points, these main topics, then we should be able to have all these conversations and not say you're a dude and draw lines and separate the movement. Those people can go do that. And I'm going to sit here and try to have conversations with everybody else. I don't know who I am.
Have you guys heard of the let them theory? It's interesting because Patricia and I sometimes talk about how the process of the awakening gets even harder because we're resisting it. Well, in the same way that once you're on the path, like you're saying, at first you're frantic because you're like, okay, now I have a mission and I'm going to go balls to the wall with this mission. And yeah, we freak everybody out at first because we're so we're so intense. But there's something called the let them theory. And this is really interesting to me. And I've had to really swallow this theory a lot because on top of a lot of the things that I've been through, slander is one of them. I've now been through this multiple times where people are out there saying things about me that are not remotely true. And there's this intensity in me that I want to stick up for myself. I want to stand up for justice, especially when it's something that you can prove. And so you're scrambling to change minds, right? Or to like whatever, defend the truth, stand up for what's right. But the let them theory basically says that it's not our job to move anyone into position. It's not our job to manipulate the mind or, even when we say we're red pilling people, in a way that kind of gives us the responsibility of shoving something down somebody else's throat. It's up to them to swallow the pill. We can't red pill people. What we can do is we can hand them something and then they red pill themselves. So the let them theory basically says no matter what they think, let them. No matter how they behave, let them. No matter what they say about you, no matter how wrong they are, let them be wrong. Let them do all those things. You just, like you said, you make it sexy. You make it desirable. And you can't make something sexy or desirable if you're frantic or angry or calling people names or full of vitriol. You can only lead the way and have people be like, oh, remember Joe? He's so positive. It's funny because when you talk about how you were lost for hope, this gave you hope. That's now what you do, what you provide. It's such a perfect example of what you needed, you became.
Patricia, can I add, because I got to add one small thing to what Kate just said before.
No, go ahead.
So Kate, there's a thing that they taught us in those 12-step programs, and that was the Serenity Prayer. Do you know the Serenity Prayer?
Oh, yeah. I love it.
So God grant to accept the things we cannot change, courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So there was I've said this on my show a couple times, so my people are going to know this, but for you guys, there's a me version of that Serenity Prayer that blew my mind when I heard it. The first time, and it's stuck with me ever since. It's God grant me the serenity to accept the people I can't change, the courage to change the ones I can, and the wisdom to know it's only me.
Oh,
wow.
Blew my mind, and I've held on to it ever since.
I love that. I love that.
Write that down. I mean, I've done the 12-step program as well. I mean, I spent 6 months in rehab, but I got the coin. But yeah, that is profound. And I was very stubborn in the beginning. I would actually say it differently, as in, I want to change the things or I can change the things that I want, something like that. And later on, obviously, down the line, when you get a bit more wiser and you stub your toe multiple times, then you learn, right? And what I learned from as well is the sharing that they do within these programs. I had like 70 people in front of me and having to talk about my whole life. And it was very vulnerable. But because you're so vulnerable, you learn so much from others as well, sharing their story, but also not to be judged by others as well. That shame and guilt that you lose with that. And I see that as well in this movement. But like Kate and you both talked about this actually in a way, is the when you think you know it, and then it turns out, yeah, we actually know so little. The more that I learn, the more I learn that I know nothing, and so someday I can actually get somebody mad because I have an opinion about something, but then the next day I can actually change my mind, and then they say, well, you don't even know, yesterday you said this, look at this, and then they give you the screenshot of it, right? And today you're saying this, and it's like, yeah, because I can change my mind. And that's the beauty. We need to stay open to change our minds, and that people want to judge that, fine, right? That's on them. I don't care. But I can change my mind about something, and we should, because that instead of because I noticed as well within this whole movement, some people can stay very rigid towards a line or a path that they want to go, and they don't they don't even want to look any other way anymore, and it might actually be a little bit more nuanced. And but yeah, I just wanted to point that out as well, and it counts also for our personal lives, right?
It's funny, if I could wrap it back around, sometimes your opinion doesn't even have to change at all, right? Somebody can go onto my X account and be like, hey, you said Joe Biden's earlobes are attached and it's not him, and now you're saying this, and I'm going, wait, my opinion actually didn't change. It's just my tactics that changed. It's the way that I'm presenting the information. It doesn't necessarily mean that I don't even believe that anymore, because I still do, by the way. But I'm not putting it out the same way because there's a different battle in front of me, and I've come a long way since then.
Right. So can I go back a little bit to the point where you because you said, this got me out of the addiction. Now, obviously that didn't go from one day to the other, I assume. So well, yeah, I know that it can go quick, right? But can you explain a bit how that process was for you?
That process has been going on since I was 12. I'll be honest with you. When I say 5 rehabs, I couldn't tell you how many times in jail, 8 times Narcan, a 7-week extradition. If we're going to talk about just that aspect of growing and becoming who I am today, it was never a light switch. It was always a process. Just as deep as I don't want to say rabbit hole, but just as deep as the bottom would get, I would do just as better the next time. And that happened every time. It would get lower and higher, to the point where I didn't even know who I was anymore. I think I got out of rehab maybe the 3rd or 4th time. I'll tell you a quick story. And the girlfriend at the time, probably the prettiest girl I've ever seen. I dated for like 4 years. This is only a couple years out of high school. Took me to go see what was that movie with the American Gangster? We didn't know what the movie was about. I was like just coming out of rehab for shooting heroin. We just went to go see the #1 movie at the time. And we went to go see it. And I was already battling with multiple people in my head. And I knew who I wanted to be. I knew who I didn't want to be, but I couldn't control what was going on inside of me. And so we went and we saw this movie. And when I tell you, at the time, I thought she was the most beautiful girl I've ever seen. It's true. And when she dropped me off, what did I do? With no control, I went and I drove to Philly for a 40-minute drive. And I called the guy that's only been a month since I talked to him the last time. And he's like, yeah, I'll be there. And of course, like any other good drug dealer, he was about 2 hours late. And during that 2 hours worth of time, I drove away, sometimes almost all the way home, bawling my eyes out, crying. And I would turn around and I would go back. And then I would cry and I would leave. And I would turn around and I would go back. It was torture. And I feel like this movement's kind of been the same way. Right. I'll become very convicted in an idea and I'll put it out there. And I'm not the type of guy to tell anybody what to think. So I don't know if anybody's ever noticed in my posting, I try to post the same way that Q does. Like I try to use Socratic method because I don't want anybody to be told what to think. I feel like everybody has their own process, right? Just like mine, everybody has their own. So I never tell anybody what to think, but it's the same thing with this. I'll believe, and then I have to go try to disprove myself. And then I'll be like, what the hell? And I'll just find more confirmation. And then I have to like pray and meditate over whether or not it's confirmation bias. And so then I'll ask everybody, what do you think? Am I nuts? What am I seeing? This is that obsessive compulsive part of my personality. And then I'll get a bunch of people, even some really big OGs, that'll be like, you're nuts. And I'll be like, well, that sucks. I need to go back to the drawing board and I need to look at it again. And then I get some that tell me I suck. And I'm like, I don't really care about their opinion. And then I get a bunch of people that support me. And so it's been the same. It's just like the streets. That whole process has been very, very similar. Very similar. I think that's why that serenity prayer came up in my head when you were talking about that stuff. So I don't know the answer specifically to your question. I just know that it's been a process the whole way through. And I have my personal process, and I think everybody should acknowledge their own personal process through this thing.
Yeah, and that it's not, that the process is not something you get on the other side of. It is always ongoing, and there are going to be dark days, there are going to be light days, but hopefully you start getting more light days than dark. And then once you go through those next dark things, number one, to have a support system around you. Number two, to also have the experiences that you have behind you to look back on and say, okay, I know no matter how dark this gets, I can get through it. And that can be everything, because, you know, those low points of your life when you're driving back and you're like, you feel like you have no control over even yourself. You know, you're just like, this is why, again, I think it's those outliers. It's those people that have been through shit that can look at how screwed up the system is and know you don't have to be evil or stupid in order to get wrapped up in it. It's designed to attack, and it's designed to keep you in this process of self harm, of not believing in yourself and hurting yourself, and going down these paths where, like, every step of the way you are presented with these ways out, but there's never a way out of the dark night other than to just go through it, and there are no shortcuts.
I absolutely agree.
The thing I think I've learned the most, Patricia and Kate, is that it doesn't matter what they think. And so in all those years that I struggled, why do you think I was the class clown? Because I needed them to like me. Why do you think I had to be the MVP or the captain of the team? It's because I needed everybody, needed that. It was an insecurity. I needed that attention.
Right.
Why did I have to be the one that was like doing the biggest keg stand or the most acid? You know, like, I don't want to go down that dark road again, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It was because I needed to be the center of attention. And so that was all training, because now I get to this point and I am getting a little bit of attention. And for the first time ever, it's not about the attention. It's legitimately about my son. It's legitimately about the movement. It's legitimately about Donald Trump and the country. It's not about me. And for the first time ever, I'm getting healthy attention instead of filling a void.
But also, it's not about you anymore, as in, even an addiction is about ourselves, right? And so, but now you're doing it for the world and for
Right.
the good of everybody. It's you now live for others in a way, right? For your country or for the people around you, for the community. You know, because as addicts, we tend to be very selfish, because, you know, it's about me, and wherever it comes from, whether it's, you know, even the trauma about the attention that you were talking about. And so you literally transformed yourself to a new side of yourself that you didn't know before, and you discover that, you know, it's so much more rewarding to be there for other people and for the country, for the community and whatnot. And that's so important, because that gives you the authenticity that you have. You know, obviously there's always some ego shining through, but then we stump our toes again, you know, and we learn. But and that's why it's an ongoing process. But I do have to say, I'm so proud of you. And you know, it makes me emotional, because, you know, I've been through that path. I haven't been in jail or anything, but I did go through a very rough time. And, you know, how many people didn't make it? And you did it well. And look at you today. And, you know, I hope you did forgive yourself for your son. I hope you did forgive yourself for the things that whatever happened, because those are in the past. And you should look at who you are today. But I don't even know you, but I'm really proud of you that you managed to do this, because, you know, it's a struggle. It's a real freaking struggle, no matter what you've done. And because at the end of the day, you did it to yourself, right? But not everybody gets out of it. And you did.
Patricia, I got us. Okay, so I'm gonna borderline be crossing. I'm not gonna cross any lines, but I got to say this.
Cross the line.
Well,
Okay.
okay. So here's the thing. I'm again, like I said, I would never take my experience because it's made me who I am today, right? So let's just start there, and then I'll go into this. Old me, should someone have crossed me or stabbed me in the back? I've already done it to like MG show, right? They attacked me for being an addict, etc. And I didn't hesitate. I stabbed back, I clipped their show, I said things, and I was like, that was part of my process. I realized, what am I doing? This isn't what this is about. This isn't about ego. What am I doing? Like, let them say what they want to say. And if they guide someone to the right place, then so be it. And if they don't, then they'll fade away. And so as I've gone through this process, that's now happened multiple times since. And I've learned every time a little better how to just stick to the mission and not acknowledge that someone else is stuck where I've already previously been. I don't judge them for it. I was there too. That ego will make you not bite your tongue in times when you should. And so you end up looking like I've never seen anyone successfully snap back.
Right.
And so,
good point.
So I've learned that, okay, say what you're going to say. What does that mean? All you're doing is trying to hurt my ego because you have one. What is ego? But edging God out, right? It's another thing I learned in the rooms. So I will stick to prayer and meditation and continuing to try to do the right thing. And you can take all your ego and shove it.
Right.
Again, it's let them, you know, oh, they're slandering me. Let them, because the hardest thing about faith and the hardest thing about this whole process is the lag time. If justice happened immediately, then it would be a lot easier. It would be simple. And we would see everybody, you know, get their comeuppance and all would seem right in the world and everything would make sense. It is the lag time between somebody doing something despicable and justice being served, whether that justice is just that they're a rotten human being and they have people fooled for now. But let them, because eventually things do happen and it is the process. If everything was easy, there would be no process to learn from. And we would leave this world with really gaining nothing. You can't take anything with you other than the growth of your human spirit while you're here on this godforsaken planet. So we would be robbing ourselves of the very thing that we are here to cultivate if we don't go through that process of things being unfair, unjust, having to learn to temper ourselves, to temper what it is that we want. We think that, like I was saying before, like we were talking about, once you start that process and you're like, okay, I'm bettering myself, I'm making better choices, I've learned from my mistakes, I am no longer making these awful causes. We expect the world to mirror back those things and to reflect to us like, okay, well, now I'm trying. So now the world is going to be just. The world is going to show me that same thing. And it will happen, but it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of patience in order for that to align. And it really is frustrating. I was talking with Patricia earlier about this today because I'm like, I feel like what I'm seeing are all the people that are really wonderful, that have stood by me, that I know are amazing human beings, just shit luck after shit luck after shit luck, having things happen to them that you're just like, that is so unfair, that is so wrong. And then you see people who are just like the cockroaches of the universe seemingly get away with everything. They can slander, they can lie, they can be terrible human beings, they can lead people astray, and they just seem to get away with it over and over. Well, what's that about? It doesn't seem fair, but there is a purpose for it, and there is a reason that those cockroaches have to exist because they are the catalyst for the growth.
Look, I watch now. Look, like I said, when I mentioned back with the original battles I had when I was very early on, very young in this process, I look back at those battles. Do you know how many times I made a post and within 30 minutes, 10 minutes, it started to get to 5 minutes, even 2 minutes, I would delete it. I would delete it. I'm like, why am I feeding into this? The least important thing in this whole movement is my ego. The least important thing is how I feel. That's not what I stand for. That's not the direction my dad sent me down this path to do. That's the same bullshit that got me into all that trouble. And so now when they say it and I know it's lies and I know that it's been flipped on its head, like I was the one that got stabbed in the back. And then I go, it don't matter. I give it to God. And then I go find another post and I make that post because it doesn't matter. And people aren't dumb. People aren't stupid. They see what's going on. And when one faction of a group is staying on mission and the other is looking insecure or whatever it might be, that it's ego driven, or we have to be the gatekeepers of all information when you're not Q, then people will see that. Sure, it's not an instant gratification like addicts want, right? I want what I want and I want it now. But I had to break that so that I could be a positive part of this movement. That's all I want to do. That's all I care about. I'm grateful to be a part of. I don't want to be a divisive part of it. That is crap.
But you're, at this point, one of your biggest assets is your reputation in this. Yeah, you've had some missteps and you got angry and you tried to, I guess take matters into your own hands by being like, okay, this is like, I'm gonna clap back at this person because I can prove that they're not telling the truth.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing about slander and lies is that it can do damage. Absolutely. Like if somebody tried to come out about you tomorrow and say something wildly untrue that made you sound like a monster, it's very hard to just sit back and be like, okay, God's got this. Because now this is your livelihood. And really, I mean, all we all have is our reputation, is our character. You've worked so hard on your character to present your character, to be authentic. And it really is unfair that people can just come in and cut that down without anything being true. So like, how do you find that serenity prayer in those attacks?
So, oh man, this is gonna be hard to answer because I do know your story, Kate. At least I know to the level that I know. I don't know it all, I'm sure. You've been through it worse in this movement. You've been around a lot longer than I have. And so my answer is not going to equate your story. It's just not. They're not the same. So, but for me and my story, I know that I've laid it all out there. I just did it on this show, only for the second time that I ever tell that part of my story. It's tough for people to try to use anything against me because I've already told you the truth. You, like I said, it's not the same story. Things have been said about you that aren't even close to the truth. So I don't know how to equate what we're going through exactly. But it's one of the reasons I'm here to support you. Mm-hmm. Because I do see the differences. I will say though, that I do truly believe that if we stay in faith, if we stay in prayer, stay in meditation, that the movement's not dumb. People see. And so, sure, it's not going to happen right now for any of us, right? And my story's 30 years, 40 years almost long. But I do feel like I'm a bit of an example that if you just continue to try to grow every day, that good things will happen. And I believe that for you too. Of course, the process got to play out, but.
Yeah, for me, well, obviously, Kate is my best friend, but even so, I just can't stand injustice. So I always want to help them and want to set things straight for them on their behalf. And that really, because it triggers me, seeing somebody taking another down whom I know so well to be the complete opposite of what they are saying. And then, I mean, I suffer on her behalf, right? And it's actually vice versa. However, I'm not being attacked publicly yet.
Well, I didn't want to make this about me. But I know because Joe is out there now, right? And I because you're doing important stuff and because you're doing good work, eventually, unfortunately, I do think you become a target as well. And so that's why I think this is so important. These conversations where, Joe, you are letting people in and you are showing them who you are, where you've been, what you've been through, so that if anybody were to ever hear something about you and your character, they can think back to this conversation or any of the other conversations that you've had and think to themselves, like, how does that resonate with me? Does that sit well? And does that resonate with what I know about Joe's character and who he is as a person? You're not just here sharing the news with people. You are sharing yourself. You're sharing your personal story.
I think that part's important. Do you know what I could tell you guys? I would love to ask you this, and I don't want you to say names. But since I put my face out there after my dad gave me that direction, I've been stabbed in the back a bunch of times. But there's been three major ones, and I'll bet you the audience nobody even knows who all three of them are.
Mm-hmm.
You know why? Because I stuck to the mission.
Right.
And all three that I believe were ill-intended are fading away because I stuck to the mission and I didn't let my ego get in the way. And I don't know if that's good advice for anybody. I just know that's my process and that's where I'm at right now. Who knows? Maybe somebody will put me in a position where I'll have to clap back. I don't know. But I just know that's my story so far. There's three and nobody knows who they are.
Well, you brought up Matrix and those guys before, and obviously, like, people know about the whole Mossad stuff and their hand in the Mossad stuff. So to pull this back to myself for just a second, that is a time that I've done exactly what you're saying, like to instead of like going out there and attacking them or, even defending myself, I let it play out. And it's not that I sit here to myself like, okay, I can keep it in now. I literally don't care about those guys. It's not just that, like, I don't even care. I don't know if they're successful. I don't know if their show is doing well. I don't know about any of that. And it doesn't matter to me because I don't care if they do. They could be one of the most successful shows on the planet. They're in a different world than I am because their vibration is a different, like, we're almost like two different radio stations. I can't force myself to care.
I sincerely agree with you. And you know what? With whatever might be going on now or whatever, I guarantee you with some time and doing it the right way, you're going to come to that same conclusion. I know that it doesn't happen overnight, right? I'm the I want it now guy. But I've learned through this process that if we just keep putting one foot in front of the other and doing it with the right intentions, with the right backing, whether it be whatever you believe in spiritually, right? I believe in Jesus Christ as my savior. Not everyone has to. But if you do it through that prayer and meditation, the way that I've been taught, then you will get through that process where whatever this hurdle might be will end up the same as that one.
Mm.
Yeah, and I think it's also important. I think a part of this process as well that we learn to use our intuition. I can feel when somebody is genuine. I can feel. I don't even have to see them per se. I just need to see words or whatever. But people get more and more in tune with reading other people, and then there's obviously a lot of people still in that, very much in that ego. But then we should ask ourselves, do we need these people around us? No. And once they do turn around to being humble themselves on their own terms and whatnot, then there's always room for forgiveness. But even that is a path that we have to let them learn, even if it's hard on us maybe to see that somebody is, like, stubborn in their ego, whatnot. We have no control over it whatsoever until they, it's kind of like trying to red pill somebody, but you can't because they have made up their minds about something. So it's a waiting game, and then it's the question, are we going to wait for it, or are we going to move on with our lives and things will unfold for it by itself?
Well, I think part of the reason we're at a disadvantage because we underestimate evil. And that doesn't mean that everybody that we come into conflict with in our lives is necessarily evil. Like, I don't look at Matrix. I know he's been our example, but whatever. He's just a good example. I don't think he's evil. I think he's a moron. But I don't, whatever. But what he did was evil to me. I mean, that was evil. But when people are not like connected to God, they're not connected to light, they are doing things like, Joe, even what you shared about some of the mistakes that you made, those did not come from being evil. They came from, you were not in the right space. So you were doing the wrong things. Well, when we look at, for example, gossip or slander, we can't imagine why somebody would lie. We can't imagine why somebody would not only lie, but lie to ruin somebody's life. There's a real tangible effect to that cause, which can harm a person, harm their families, cut them down. We think to ourselves, well, it's always bothered me, that saying, and I know everybody says it, there are two sides to the story and the truth is somewhere in the middle. I fucking hate that expression, because to me, I'm like, do the people that say that, have you never told the truth before? I don't think that there are always two sides to the story and the truth is always somewhere in the middle. I think that there's the truth, and then sometimes people lie. And it's like, was it Mark Twain that said it's easier to lie to somebody than to get them to accept that they've been lied to? It's because we underestimate that we are up against evil, and we don't see evil in the people around us, because the people around us aren't necessarily evil themselves. We can't paint with such a broad brush, but every human being is capable of evil. The line between good and evil runs down the center of each man's heart. We all have the equal ability to be both good and evil.
Absolutely. I agree.
I want to throw in something. So, money's a necessary evil. Okay. So if it wasn't a necessary evil, I would do all my podcasts for free and my son would just eat out of the garden that we have in the yard. Except for that, that's not how this works. I do have to support my child, and I do have to move forward. And so I'm very specific about who I use as sponsors, because at the same time I have to survive, especially if I want to throw all of my passion into this the way that I do. And so money is a necessary evil. But what does the Bible say? But for the love of money is the root of all evil. And so when the money becomes the priority, it becomes a different story. It goes from necessary to the love. And then it becomes the root of all evil. And that is where the ego creeps in. That is where all of the things where you will stab a friend in the back or think only of yourself, etc. And sin becomes much higher on the priority list than caring about the people that are helping you build what you build. And so it's a fine line, right? You just kind of talked about that line, Kate. And so I think that I've recognized here recently that there's people on just either side of this line. And so that's why I try to associate myself with some, and that's why I just don't associate myself with the other. And that doesn't really give you solution to anything you're going through, but it's just something I've thought about.
Well, once, you find your purpose, you find your mission, it's really amazing and such a blessing to be able to also support yourself and your family being on that mission and living in that purpose. And you are proving, and as are others out there, that it is possible sometimes. It's rare, but it is possible to live your mission, live your purpose, and also make money at it. I mean, shoot, everybody should be able to do that. But once the money overtakes the mission, once you lose that integrity, you lose it all. And there again, we go back to that lag time. If it happened in an instant, nobody would do it. It's because you can get away with it at first. You're like, well, I can kind of lose a little integrity here. Maybe I'll go with the sponsor who, is kind of evil or, isn't being honest about their ingredients or, whatever it is. But, for the most part, I'm still being kind of honest. The second you lose integrity, you're already kissing it goodbye. It just takes a while for it to catch up to that. And it's very hard to stay in that because of the lag time and because there is a lack of transparency in most of the things that we do in life. It gives us this illusion that we can get away with things. And I think once upon a time, people did used to get away with more. I think as the world changes, as people's discernment gets better, people will get away with less and less. And that lag time between doing something wrong and seeing the consequences for it will get shorter and shorter.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. And, like I said, people eventually, I do think, I believe in karma, in the sense that when you do good, you will get good back. And when you do bad, you will get the bad back as well. I mean, whether it's going to take a long time or not, it really doesn't matter, but it will come eventually at you. And I think that's just, and not as a revenge sense, but eventually that will, balance out the injustice of things. So, and this is where, again, I love that you get full circle. It's let them, let them and move on, and eventually the answers will come and the justice will come. And just like Joe says as well, I love that, by the way, because I do believe there you can see when people have the passion for being out there and telling the truth, and doing what they do, and those who actually they just take the easy road and they just want to choose for money as a priority. And but I do believe that will eventually become very, very obvious, for those that have eyes to see. And I do believe more and more people, because that in itself is another, awakening, if you will.
Do you know how the drops say that this is bigger than even Anons can imagine?
Yes.
I think that applies here, right? So I'll just speak for myself. You guys can apply it as you wish. But for me, when I realized that me talking specifically to one other person on social media because of something I felt or they made me feel or vice versa, when I realized that there was many, 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 many more people involved in that, it didn't necessarily apply to like I have to sway more of them than the other person does. When I realized they're all going through their own process. So what does it matter if I'm right or I'm wrong? Sure, we can go back to insecurity and financials. Believe me, I've been there. This movement's helped me get my son back, and it wasn't but for them all donating that I was able to pull that off. So I'm aware of that angle. But if I realize that everybody's going through this and they all have their own discernment and God has given them all free will, then me going out there and trying to win individually means freaking nothing.
Right.
It's not about me winning. I don't care what you think individually. I honestly don't care if more of the audience listening to you is on your side right now, because my mission's down the road. It's about my kid. It's about my grandkids. It's about what my dad did for me.
Right.
So what do I care if you're right or wrong in this conversation and more people agreed with you right now? I don't effing care. I don't care.
So do you, because I'm still curious about what your dad said before he died, right? His wish. Do you, I mean, how did that process go? How did you think about that? When he said that, because obviously you had your shame and guilt, but then obviously it's kind of a rock pull, but then in a positive sense, I guess. So, I mean, you did not expect that, obviously. So I wonder how that, how that process went for you internally, and the thought patterns that you had when that happened.
All right. So you've motivated me to tell you the last part of the story, which I didn't.
Great.
So the very long part short, but I will tell you the meat of it. I ended up getting let out that day. I went into the courthouse. I owed them 30 days in Portland. And when I went into the courthouse, I came with a letter that I had written in my jail cell, and I explained the whole situation, and I tried to take full responsibility because it wasn't my first time in front of a judge. Was let's just be honest. I said I was a bullshitter my whole life. So I knew what the judge wanted to hear. I knew what was real. And so I presented it to him in a way that I hoped would benefit me to be able to make it to my dad's funeral. And so I explained to him, through no fault of yours, but all fault of mine, this is the position I'm in. This is the situation I've been through, 7 weeks, 89 days in Delaware County, et cetera, et cetera. My dad passed away today, and I would love to continue to pay my debt to society. But if I could ask anything of the court, it would be the mercy that I could go be at my father's funeral. And the DA tried to stop me. They weren't going to give me any credit for the 7 weeks and the 89 days. They told me I didn't start my 30 days until I entered their jail because I owed them their time. That's just how the prison system works. And the judge literally did this and stopped the DA from talking. The DA was asking that I prove that my dad was dead, that I prove that I was extradited, that I prove it was all the burden was on me, and the judge stopped them. And the judge was like, I believe him. He saw me in tears. And so he released me in a weird way, right? So he released me 1 hour short of Monday. Well, it's a very small jail in Clackamas County, which is right outside of Oregon. And so what that meant was they don't release all weekend. They released me on Friday. This was Friday, 4 hours from when I was in court. I was to roll up my shit, excuse my language, and I was to get kicked out of this jail. So I then got let out thinking, okay, I'm going to go see my dad. I'm going to go be at my dad's funeral. And when I was being released, they told me I couldn't leave until I saw a probation officer. So that probation officer, the office wasn't open until 9 o'clock on Monday. Well, it's now 6 o'clock on Friday. And I got no money. They left all my property in Philly. So I'm now wearing lost and found clothes from the prison. So I had these like triple X shorts on. I might have weighed 170 pounds at the time. I'm 205 now, by the way. I'm sure I'm fat, but back in that I was like really thin. And so I'm wearing a girl's V-neck blue t-shirt, some gray baggy ass sweatpants, and I'm wearing Jackie Chan's, which are prison shoes. And I was let out with no money, no nothing. I'm like, okay, I got to make it till Monday. So I end up sleeping in a homeless shelter. I slept under some grocery carts behind the shopping center, the grocery store in Clackamas. And I walked like whatever it is. It's like 18 miles or something to Portland. And when I got to Portland, my feet were bleeding. And I literally went to an AA meeting and I just threw up my story on the floor. And I told everybody what was going on. And so one of the homeless guys grabbed me and he took me out and he stole a chicken. He stole 2 rotisserie chickens from the grocery store. And that's how we ate the one night. And then he let me sleep on the porch of one of his Portland, super liberal city, right? So I slept on the porch of these like hippie liberals that just wanted to help homeless people. So I'd be lying if I said I didn't survive because both sides have helped me. They have. And so I slept on this floor. And anyway, they took me to, he also took me that morning after he got a shower and ate some cereal in the house. They made me sit on the porch. You know, they wanted to help, but they don't really want homeless people in their house. So he ate cereal, he got a shower, and then he took me down into the city and he showed me, here's where you can get help tomorrow. And so on Tuesday, I walked in and I sat in this Portland socialist help homeless, hug the trees type of office. And I signed up for a program that he told me about that they have called a ticket home. And so if you can prove homeless and you can prove an address anywhere else, they will buy you a plane ticket home. And so I sat there until, I don't know, 11 o'clock, maybe noon. And I get called into this office. Now my dad's funeral is in like 4 hours or 5 hours from now. And so I sit in this lady's office and I just break out in tears. Now, this lady's name was Miss Precious. She was like 300-pound black lady, had a mane like a lion. And she listened to my story and she called my buddy Marco and she confirmed my address and she bought me the plane ticket. And She asked me how I was going to get there. And I'm like, these shoes are supposed to be white and they're red because my feet are bleeding. And she said, hold on. And she risked her whole job. She told me to walk out the front door and down to the corner. And she took her lunch break and she picked me up and she drove me to the airport. And she walked me all the way through security because all I had was jail ID, no clothing, nothing. She gave me $20 to eat with. And she walked me through the security and she put me on an airplane and flew my ass to Baltimore, where that dude that I told you was my sponsor picked me up. And on the way up the highway 95 to get to Philly, we stopped at a Goodwill and he bought me a suit for like $12 or something. And I walked into my dad's funeral looking like crackhead in some suit that didn't fit me. And I got to speak at his funeral. And everyone looked at me like, I'll never forget the looks. They weren't good. Let's tell you that. But I got to speak at my dad's funeral.
Wow.
And then, can you tell me the original question? Because I had a point in this and I lost it because that gets so emotional.
So your dad's wish and what went through your mind when he gave you that last wish?
So I went through a long process of trying to figure out where I could even be because I went back to Philly, I now still had to report back to Portland. And because I left Philly, I had a warrant in Philly. So I got caught in this catch-22 thing. So if I would have turned myself in Philly, I was going to jail. If I didn't go back to Portland, I was going to jail. So no matter what I did, I was going to jail. And so I just kind of like put them all on the phone together instead of turning myself in like I did the last time. So I called Delaware County and I said, this is a situation. And then I called Portland. I'm like, this is a situation. And they went back and forth. And you know what happened in the middle of that? Portland made it legal to be a drug addict. So here's just one more example of how liberal policy saved my life.
Get rid of them.
All my charges in Portland vanished.
Wow.
$40,000 worth of getting extradited, which was on my shoulders, now didn't matter. So my life has been saved by not only my dad and Donald Trump and conservatism, but it's also been saved by liberal policies and dropping charges and making drug addiction legal. And I got caught.
What year was that?
2016.
Okay, because I know Trump did a lot of prison reform also. It's not necessarily a liberal,
It was Portland.
But I gotta be fair
Right.
about liberals. I mean, yeah, we all, supposed to hate them and all that, but I do see a lot of empathy as well. Obviously, I'm not talking, the crazy blue haired with whatever, but I do see in liberals as well a lot of people with empathy. Not
exactly. It's a
necessarily-
psyop. The right
not-
versus left
wait.
thing is a psyop.
Yeah, it is. So it's not necessarily about, being empathic about that what's not good for the country as a whole, but as an individuals, they're very empathic. So, I also tuned it down on them a lot because I do see on certain, obviously, we're talking still about the sane ones, right? Not the psyop crazy ones, but, I do see, I mean, I tend to look at them with more warmth, I want to say, than before. It was just attack, right? But they do have their own ideologies and their own ways of looking into the world more on an individual level rather than, as a country. And so there's nothing really wrong with that, but
Mr. Krinkle says ideologies were hijacked, and I will add, and weaponized. So, you can look back at the whole hippie movement. There were so many beautiful things about the hippie movement, but they turned free love into, exactly what we were talking about. How can we weaponize this into keeping people in the system, having unmarried women get pregnant and people addicted to drugs and all of these things? you know, those were obviously the weaponized byproducts of things. But they say also, you know, if you're not a liberal when you're young, you don't have a heart. And if you're not a conservative when you're older, you don't have a brain. Well, what we're seeing right now is the meshing of what is right about both ideologies. I mean, look at all the vaccine stuff. Those were the liberals. And then, you know, look at the conservatives. Like we were warmongers. And now we're having to like meet in the middle and realize like you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. There are good things about both sides. It's really just about freedom and sovereignty and doing the right thing in different perspectives.
Right.
Okay.
But yeah, there needs to be a nuance anyway. And obviously we tend to just throw them. How do you say that?
Baby
Like,
out with the bathwater.
yeah. And, you know, so those people that helped you, Joe, you know, because I know some that are really great and they're so amazing when it comes to animal welfare, for example. And so, but yeah, on the other hand, you know, they're completely bonkers when it comes to stuff that I think that doesn't make any sense. But, you know, I do think we need to start become a bit more empathic ourselves towards both sides, like I said.
Empathetic. It's different.
Empathetic, yeah,
Empathy.
and knowing and distinguish what is like downright nuts and crazy and what is good. But you know, I actually kind of love that you were, well, saved. Yeah, you came in this situation where you got to see these both sides, which is actually beautiful because you're in this movement now, and you can look back and say, okay, I can, you know, judge all the crazy liberals.
Miss
But
Precious, she was an angel, you know, she was an angel for
right.
you.
I've called her 3 times to say thank you.
Mm.
Wow.
So I remembered the point to answer to come full circle and answering your
Right.
question. So that part was the lead up to tell you that just the last final thing he asked about my father. So there was one other thing he said to me. It was just the last thing he actually said to me person to person before he passed away. And that was, take care of your boy, take care of your son. And it was like, it was tear filled. It was emotional. And so once all that process ended and I landed in Pennsylvania, I then fought, just as I did for Donald Trump and the movement, to get my son back. And the harder I fought, the more I lost.
Mm.
And the more I lost was because I had this long paper trail of addiction. I had a child endangerment. And my mom, it's a whole nother story, stepped in and took my son. And not only was she never going to give him back, but the court system in Pennsylvania was never going to give me my son back because I was always going to be the ex-junkie. And she was always going to be the grandmother that stepped in. She started a nonprofit called Gratitude for Grandparents, etc. She made it her whole identity to help others that were also going through addiction or alcoholism and taking care of grandkids, kinship families, they call them, whatever. And so I went through that fight for 10 years to get my son back. And all I would ever gain is one more hour on the weekend. At first, it started with the whole story. I was never going to get my son, never. And then 3 years ago, I get a phone call from the police that says that my mom and her paramour are being accused of abuse on not only my son, but the other grandchild, because the paramour's kid had overdosed and died. So they were taking care of 2 grandchildren. And when I got a call from the police that said that I should not return my son from my weekend, he's never gone back.
Oh,
Wow.
3 years later, my son is now with God. In my opinion, God stepped in because the court systems were never going to allow it. And God gave me my son back. And 3 years later, we now live in Palm Beach. My son has an e-bike and goes skimboarding every day. He's playing lacrosse for and like, I have no idea how much this happened in my life. I have no idea, except for that process allowed me to completely change. And the court systems weren't ever going to do it. I did rely on some policies that aren't some things I would necessarily agree with now. My dad gave me a whole bunch of direction and God stepped in, period. There's no way my son would have ever shown up with me. He's now 14. He's been with me. This is his 3rd year in school. Now,
Wow.
my mom's paramour just a week ago got found guilty, and my mom got found not guilty. So the story's not over. but that's where we're at right now. And if it wasn't for that whole I don't know where I'd be. I'd just be alone somewhere. But now my boy, I'm waiting for him to walk in the door right now so he can take care of Gitmo.
Oh my God, that makes me really emotional. I
Yeah,
don't even know why.
it
I
was
don't have
legitimate.
children, so I don't know. But yeah, it makes me emotional because, it's like you come for a full circle, you paid your dues, you did the thing that you had to do. And this is what I mean, sooner or later things will come. We'll get you will get your justice, and we never know how. And it doesn't matter, we don't need to know the how. But
Well,
you're an example of that. It does, it just, it can happen, it does happen.
yeah, God
And
in the universe figures it out in a way that we can't. And like when you did try to take matters into your own hands, like, obviously it's a completely different scenario, completely different situation. But like you said, when you tried to like clap back at people to get your own justice, it didn't resonate with you. It didn't feel good. And that's your internal system saying, okay, this is not the right way. And when you surrendered to it, you can't sit down and pray for that. You can't sit down and pray like, gee, I hope something happens where one day when I go to return my son, they're going to say, don't do it. Like that would have been beyond your wildest dreams.
That car had 3 other kids in it, and my girl at the time driving, and we were on our way to Hershey Park, and the whole car just started bawling. Everybody was hugging him because he never wanted to go back. He always wanted to be with us.
wow. So how is your bond with your son right now?
Closer than it's ever been. I'm now more of a father than I am a friend, which is really cool. That's probably not attractive. Like that wouldn't have been attractive to me 3 years ago. 3 years ago, I was like, "Come here, my dude," and like, "Let's go skateboard or go play sports or throw a lacrosse ball." And
That's again the trying to win him for you.
right, well, because I was in a position where I was
Well, yeah.
very vulnerable, but now I'm his dad, so I'm like, "Yeah, bro, I'll buy you an e-bike. You better come home with good grades, or I'm taking it." So it's now evolved into this parent father son thing that I always pushed back on with my own. And so for the first time, I think not only did I fulfill the go vote for Donald Trump thing, but I'm finally fulfilling the father son thing that I destroyed as a child to my dad.
So did you ever talk to him about what happened, and or would you? I don't know if you've done it, but about that day that um you know that you kind of overdosed and left him in the house. I mean,
He was
would
truly,
would you ever talk about it, or would you tell him?
he is well aware of my mistakes.
Right.
I don't know that we've talked about that. So okay, so maybe I want to. I know, Kate, you're a parent. Are you a parent as well, Patricia?
No, I'm not.
Um, there's different parenting tactics,
Right.
and my mom was a liar, and that comes off very harsh, but that's how I feel. Right? I never smoked weed. You're not gonna. I never did this. I never did this. That's not who I am. Obviously, if anybody watches this show or my show, will understand that I am very transparent. And so I am doing it the complete opposite of the way I was taught. Bro, this is what I did. This is not okay. This is the results you'll get. And so I'm trying to teach him that way. He's a result. He knows we weren't together for 10 years. I didn't see him from 2 to 12, and he's about to be 15.
Wow.
Yeah, but you still have so much time to have influence, like you'll have influence on him the rest of his life. It doesn't matter whether he's a little kid or not.
Yeah. But
Well, but I can imagine that maybe later down the line he might, encounter like problems from whatever happened to him, either through your mother. So I do think it's important that, and I do think you're the right dad to now, because you've been through it yourself. You looked it in the eyes and whatnot. So I'm sure that you would prevent it for your son as well to, you know, um, how things are out of our youth will come back to us sometimes because traumas and shit. So when that time comes, I'm sure that you would be the perfect dad to get him back on track for, and to prevent whatever trauma there might be lingering.
Guess who just walked in? Come
His
Oh,
here.
son.
no.
Hello.
Hello, handsome boy. Oh,
Hold on, I'm gonna turn this up so you can hear him.
Oh yeah.
Can you hear him?
hello.
Hello.
Tell us everything. Tell us about you. Give us the dirt on your dad.
I was just talking about you.
Yes.
I was just saying all the good things, like how you better have good grades or you're losing your e-bike. Okay. All right. I love you. Can you take care of her, please? Yeah. Thank you.
You kid.
Yeah.
Oh my
I
gosh.
mean, say no
Okay.
more. I already seen him, and I mean, just skip the whole question that I just asked, because I just saw this guy, this boy, and man. No.
Well, but Joe, I love what you're saying,
Yeah.
because you're right. There are two different types of parenting, and the generations that came before us were very much like, don't do this, it'll kill you, whatever. But to have more of an honest approach, I think is
Yes.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In my
I think
opinion,
it's essential.
there's no other way, in my opinion.
Right.
We were lied to. If we want to get like political about it for a second, we were lied to about everything. The say no to drugs, the DARE program, the I got my very own set of designer jeans. I don't know if you guys remember all that stuff that we were taught in school.
The
But
war on drugs.
it was, the war on drugs was BS. They were the ones propagating the drugs. They were the ones bringing it in. And then they were pushing these agendas where they taught kids all about drugs, and then they all went and did them.
Mhm.
No. I'm going to tell you about the results of what happened on the war of drugs, and then you're going to be given enough rope to hang yourself.
Right.
And if you do, I'm going to step right in and tell you I told you so and take some things from you. Not beat you and lie to you.
Right. You have broken generational trauma, like you said in the beginning of this. Like you have empathy for what your parents went through when they were children, and you can have that perspective. Okay, my parents were the way that they were because they were the result of whatever, and you were the result of what they did to you as well. But you have broken that cycle for your own child, for your own life, and quite frankly, for generations of other people and their children, because you are out here sharing yourself.
Right.
I'm very proud of you too. I really am. I'm so grateful to know you. I'm so grateful that you're out here doing what you're doing. I'm so grateful that your son has you and that you are winning. And I know you are going to continue to win, and you deserve to.
Absolutely.
I hope.
Yeah.
I hope that I'm helping this platform, because I'm grateful to know both of you as well. Seriously.
You are. You absolutely are.
Yeah. I just want to say thank you for sharing your story, because that was absolutely beautiful. And whatever people gonna say and use against you, whatever, I mean, you can just be proud of yourself and what you have overcome, because that's all that matters. And yeah, I wish you so much beautiful luck and great things, because you deserve it and you fought through that, and you need to tell that to yourself as well. And I believe you do, because you learned a lot, and you came from a really deep dark hole, and you climbed out of it. So wow, beautiful.
If I could say something, I know this ended up telling my story, but my story is not just mine, it's ours. I'm not the only one. When I tell my story, I get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that have something that parallels it. So the reason that I continue to tell this story, sometimes with more and more detail, sometimes with very emotional parts, is in hopes of the thing I talked about earlier, which is, walking in an attractive manner so that others will reach out. If you're going through it now, or you've been through it, find strength in it. This story's not about me. It's about us. And so I hope that comes across. I don't want me telling my story ever to sound like, ooh, let's listen to Joe Rambo's story. It's not. I don't give a shit about that. What I care about is the movement and the progression and everybody's individual story. So if you
Well,
need help, reach out. If you've been through it, use it to help people, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, that's why we have this show, because this is exactly the reason why this show exists. Because show, hate that word, because it's not a show. It's a storytelling thing, and it's so important to be heard. Um, but also so that more people will share and that more people know they're not alone in this fight, right? Um, yeah, that's really what this is about.
Well, it definitely came across, you are authentic, and this is, the more we are around and focus on authentic people, the more it will, like, physically almost affect us when we are around things that are not authentic. This helps us work on our discernment, focus on people telling the truth, being real, raw, and transparent. And then that's what we need to move towards. Like, yes, the political stuff is important as well, but like, we're trying to usher in a golden age here. And the only way that we're going to do that is by being here for each other, being authentic and real and raw, and helping each other through these dark portions. So thank you so much. I just saw you just gifted subscriptions. Thank you so much, Joe. Thank you to Just In Case Friend, and to News Trees and
Yeah.
Dave, who was also in here. Thank you to Real AF Patriot. I missed these earlier. He said, I love you guys. We love you too. And he said, feel better, Kate.
Yeah, I want to thank just what was it? Just in case friend, Fred, as well for the subscriptions, and I want to thank Joe for being here and telling the story. And yeah, we'll be back next week with a new guest. Who knows?
I got to show my son. Can I? And we talked about him so much from the show. Can I show my dad?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
So this, I keep this right by my desk, but that's my old man. That's the guy that inspired everything I did.
Pop. Cute.
Yeah.
Look
Oh
at
my
that
God.
head of hair.
Yeah, that's not real.
No, it's not.
I can see the face, that the way that he looks and the way he smiled, that he definitely is the type to say that his wish is to vote Trump, because he
He reminds
he
me.
he has a very positive, I don't know, was he a person that didn't linger on negative stuff?
I got to, when my dad went to his I think it was his 50th high school reunion right before he passed away. I got to meet a bunch of his friends that he went to school with, and they said things about him that were not me. And I looked up to it so much. They said, when Joe, he was a senior, I'm junior, obviously. They said, when Joe walked down the hallway, people just knew that dude was cool, and he didn't give a shit what you thought about him. And I was
Right.
like, I just wish I could have been like that.
But you are
Oh,
now.
but you are now, indeed.
That's so cool. That's so cute. Thank you for sharing that picture
You
of
just
him.
came full circle, you know that, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Well, Joe, we love you. Thank you so much for being on. Seriously, thank you so much. This has been so awesome. Wherever you guys are watching, hit that thumb, the heart, the whatever. And we will see you guys next week.
Right.
Bye.
Hey.
Love you all.